What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one wants to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, what's happening with the data affecting the markets, and some very bearish news that came out for the markets that's causing it to sink so far. So I'm going to be breaking down some important news that came out, what's going on with the markets and earnings, and also what's happening with all these different pieces of data. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. So anyways, what's going on with the market? Well, when it comes to earnings that came out, so far they have been quite decent. We actually saw Bank of America and Goldman Sachs beat on EPS and revenue, and so far they're holding up quite decently. However, the thing is, there are external pieces of news that are causing the market to shake. Firstly, we're starting to see, more and more inflationary expectations going up from the markets, from Wall Street and many different analysts, especially because retail sales are up 0.7%, which is stronger than what the estimate was. And if this does end up driving up inflation, this could cause the Fed to have to be more hawkish, and it's going to increase the odds of another rate hike very soon. Now, on top of this, I just wanted to mention that there are some fears about the next earnings cycle because don't forget that tomorrow we have like Tesla's earnings and a couple of others. And the fears are coming out that Wall Street are expecting some weak earnings. Wall Street's expecting a big decline. That's leading to some fear as well. Now, with some more data that came out, retail sales are hotter than what the forecast consensus happened to be. Same thing with the gas slash autos. We're going to be watching to see what's happening with industrial production. This has been quite decent so far. But besides that, we have a couple of Fed speakers later on for today. We have Bowman giving a speech alongside Barkin. We also have some more housing data coming out 30 minutes after the market opens. So far the data is not like that massive, but retail sales did cause somewhat of a decline, not to mention more fears of inflation going up and fears about earnings being weaker than expected because many analysts from Wall Street are basically saying the same thing. Now, Tim Cook has made a surprise visit to China as the iPhone, gets a very challenging start. That is bearish news in a way because if you think about their sales in China have declined quite a bit, and now Tim Cook has to visit China, has to like look through things and discuss different strategies and techniques that Apple's going to use to help drive up their sales. So that's very important to note. And finally, there's this news about Tesla about how they had to recall about 55,000 Model X vehicles. This has to do with basically, they mentioned the fact that the vehicle controller is likely to fail to detect low brake fluid and it's not displaying the warning sign for many of these models. So they're basically saying that they have, an over-the-air software update. So you could argue that this isn't like truly a recall, but the news is saying that it is one, and this will lead to fears anyways. But it is an over-the-air software update fix. So we'll see what happens with Tesla for there. However, the news is calling this a recall, so it's not the best of things for Tesla. Anyways, now let's talk about the charts, how everything's looking. So in my video from yesterday, I talked about how we had this pennant forming. We're either going to see this thing break to the upside or the downside. From a technical standpoint, yesterday we were looking a bit more bullish, but all this bad news has come out this morning, which is trumping it from the inflationary fears going up and the fears incited by Wall Street about higher inflationary expectations and not so good earnings coming out. So all these different factors are causing the market to slow down. And with that being said, we're going to be watching the next level on SPY. So on SPY, now that we're coming down, we have this like very important demand zone right here. We have gap support at 432, and we also have 433 as a historical support. So watch those two supports very carefully. If we lose 432, I expect this gap to get filled most likely all the way down to 430.8. So there could be quite a bit of downside coming, but you want to be watching support very carefully. And if we lose 430, right, 427, 428, those are going to be on the table. Now, if we're bullish, which I'm not actually kind of doubting at this point, I think there's going to be more downside when we open. But if somehow the buyers try to push this up, you're going to be watching 434 as a resistance. Okay, that's going to be our key resistance. And then if we end up breaking above that, 434.5 is the next very tight level. 435, 436.5 would be the next level above that, but I really doubt we're going to come all the way up there. The market's looking very bearish right now, and I think the odds greatly favor more power to the downside. I believe that we have to be watching 433 in particular, not to mention, this 432 support, just to get, a better grasp of how things are looking. Because on the 4-hour time frame, SPY is looking a lot weaker now, looking a bit weaker after getting this rejection off the 200 EMA. And we're barely holding our 20 EMA. If we lose this one, it's going to come all the way down to the 432 area or the 50 EMA. So yes, the market is looking a bit weaker, and the odds do favor downside for now on SPY. For the QQQ, same thing is going on. We went over the bullish and bearish cases, right? I'm not going to delete anything, guys. I'm going to show you the truth about what I had mapped out yesterday. And we didn't get the bullish breakout despite having a bullish pennant. We actually came to the downside after this bearish news that was announced. So there's a lot of fear about tech earnings coming out very soon. There's also potential declines which are expected by Wall Street for earnings, and we're starting to see inflationary fears and all these different factors slowing the market down. So that being said, because we got the bearish case instead, right, you're going to be watching 366 as key support on the QQQ. If we lose that, it's going to be a very bearish situation where this could start sinking all the way back down towards 364, especially if you start to see Nvidia declining as it is so far. So watch those supports very carefully. This 364 area is going to be a key support. If we lose that, 362 is going to be the next level. But let's not worry about that yet until we see how it reacts to this support down here. Now, for resistance, you're going to be watching this previous support becoming resistance at this 368 area. And then we also have 368.74 and then 370 above that. Now, I don't really think the QQQ looks like it's going to try to bounce too hard. It's looking very bearish right now. It's just continuing to sink. It's been sinking for the most part during almost the entire pre-market. So the odds do favor more downside for it. And we're going to be watching 366. That's where we have our 200 EMA very close to that, and our 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. 366 is going to be a key support. If it breaks, we're going to turn even more bearish. So watch that very carefully on the QQQ. We do look more bearish so far. On Nvidia stock, I just wanted to say Nvidia is looking very bearish now. So basically, we had a bullish and a bearish case. If we had broken this resistance right here, we would see this thing kind of launch much higher for an inverse head and shoulders pattern. But if we got this rejection off this trend line, right, if we broke below this white trend line, we were talking about this key support, we could have turned really bearish. I drew out how it could have dropped. And the bearish case did end up playing out. We got this rejection off this megaphone pattern resistance. So that tells me that right now we're going to be watching 442 as support. Uh, this is the previous support right here. We had 444, then 442 below that. And if we lose that, there's 440, 437, and then not to mention, the next support all the way down to 433. So, there's quite a bit of support to the downside, but right now we're watching these supports right here. Watch 444 as a key support / resistance level alongside 442, the entire zone right there. If Nvidia manages to break and hold above 444, you're going to be watching this resistance right here, which is from the previous pre-market at 448. If you get above that, watch 451, and then this resistance up here around 455. Now, this looks more bearish. It looks like Nvidia could kind of like shop around here, then continue to sink. So you're going to be watching this 444 area very carefully, especially if we lose it. Watch 442, 440, and 437 as key supports. The odds do favor the downside for Nvidia, so watch these supports carefully. It's looking weaker for the time being, so we will see how it moves. But like I said before, it's looking more bearish so far. On Tesla, let's now talk about Tesla. Something interesting happened. So Tesla has earnings approaching, and typically as we approach earnings, we tend to see Tesla try to pump, but this time around, it's not really getting much good news. We're actually getting like news about recalls, news about their margins being bad, and this is starting to negatively affect Tesla. So yesterday I mentioned that we had this white resistance. If we broke this, we could have seen Tesla's inverse head and shoulders play out, and Tesla could have started to fly up towards this 260 area. But if we rejected very close to this trend line, we could sink right back down. And right now, it's looking like Tesla's rejecting. It's failing to break this white resistance right here. So we're currently around 251.7 right now. 250 is going to be our key support. If Tesla loses 250, it's going to come all the way back down towards 247. And if 247 fails us, then we have this next support right here, which is where this trend line happens to be, very, very close towards this 244 area. So we're going to be watching the mid 240s very carefully. If it loses 244, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of 242.5 below that. So those are just some key levels to be watching for the time being. So for Tesla, right, we're looking more bearish. This is continuing to sink instead. So watch 250 once again. And then don't forget that if we lose 250, there's 247, 244, and then 242.5 as key supports on Tesla. But before we talk about the 240s, we want to see Tesla break below 250. As of right now, it's barely holding on. So we will see if Tesla breaks or not. And then for resistance, don't forget to watch this trend line right here, which happens to be around 250, 252.8, very, very close to that. So that's going to be resistance. If we get above this white trend line, then there is potential for it to push back up to 255, then 257. But as of right now, it hasn't broken this trend line. It's looking more, kind of weak right now. It's struggling to break out. So the odds do favor us sinking a bit. So I want everyone to just be prepared for this. There is some recall news, and it's very important to be ready nonetheless. Now, I also want to add that when it comes to Aapl right here is, it's looking a bit more bearish today. Now we had this head and shoulders like pattern. I was talking about this potentially getting a pop first before we get like the sell off, or potentially, us getting like a one more pump first before it ends up selling off as well. Uh, but the bearish case would have been us just sort of sinking from here if this head and shoulders were to just be like slanted. And instead, the more bearish case ended up playing out. So this red trend line right here, I wasn't really predicting this, but it is what ended up happening because of some more bad news. The bad news is because of the broader markets, not to mention what's happening with Tim Cook. So this means that 177.5 is our key support on Aapl. I mean, if we lose this, the next major support is going to be 176.5. If we lose 177, so we have like support at every like 50-cent interval. So 177.5, 177, and 176.5 as three key supports. To turn really bearish, we want to see Aapl break below 176.5. That's when it could really start sinking. As of right now, it's just barely holding on. It's still holding very close to 177.5. So watch these supports very carefully. 178 is going to be resistance alongside 178.5. All right, so it's looking more bearish overall. We have a head and shoulders like pattern on Aapl. We had negative news involving Chinese sales for Aapl, and it's continuing to cause declines for them. With the QQQ and the Nasdaq slowing down, this is leading to more bearish momentum as well, and it's also having a negative effect on Aapl. All right, guys, so Apple's looking weaker. With that said, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. Please remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Watch resistance and support, and the market so far this morning is looking a bit more bearish with this bearish news. All right, thank you again, and peace out.